Nobody plays the finals, but I want to change that. This is an FPS game where you can do whatever you want. It has boundary-pushing destruction for a game of this nature. It's got movement mechanics in a time where that seems impossible to find. It's got good gunplay for those who care, and even viable melee weapon builds. This is a very well-balanced game, where every tool feels like it's viable, and nothing is wasted. The sad part is, you probably don't play it. Okay, I'm being dramatic for a YouTube video. Some of you may play it, but not as many of you play it as a lot of other games right now. And that's not me trying to clickbait, that's reflected in the data. It hovers around 20,000 concurrent players on the Steam charts. It has a small, niche, dedicated following, and that's okay. But why is it small? I think there are a couple of reasons. You might have seen advertising for this game and saw yet another everything goes art style where Elvis with a machine gun is locked in pitch combat with a woman with a CRT TV for a head. You might have struggled to even understand what the game was about. It's clearly a shooter game, but there's a guy with a sledgehammer, so it's not exactly Arma or Squad, now is it? You probably saw a trailer or two demonstrating the game's destructibility, but you remembered Battlefield. You've seen this song and dance before, right? I reckon you haven't, unless you played Red Faction Guerrilla. Then I guess you have. But it's not 2009 anymore. Today, The Finals is a game that purports to be the world's only dynamism shooter, whatever that means. It's basically the company's fancy in-house language for its modular gameplay design approach. This is a competitive FPS game where you can play however you want, fast or slow, use whatever weapons, precise or explosive, or whatever abilities, subtle or not so subtle. Blow up whatever you want. Set anything you want on fire to a point. Wear whatever pants you want, whatever shirt you want. The Finals is whatever you want it to be, and that's what I love about it so much. The Finals is developed by Embark Studios. We actually did a video chronicling this story as our debut video. Embark is the team working on Arc Raiders. They're a Swedish developer whose lineage aligns with the very first Battlefield games, going as far back as Bad Company 2. So if you're ever wondering where those guys went, that's where they are now. The Finals doesn't look anything like Bad Company 2. It features big dudes in rabbit heads hitting you over the head with a sledgehammer. It features robo-girls. It features America's strongest lesbians. And I would forgive you if you looked at this art design that seems like it's a million things all at once, sort of slapped together and wrote it off. But when I explain the vibe to you, it kind of starts to make sense. The Finals is a virtual reality competition. Contestants compete for glory and riches in a slew of exotic, lavish locations, like Monaco and Las Vegas. And the buildings in these locations are destructible down to the pixels. And I'm not saying that to be dramatic. I mean down to the pixel. It's the Truman Show, but everybody has a gun and they're all pointing it at each other. That's what makes this game what it is. It's a dynamic, ever-evolving, ever-destructing sandbox. If you take the time to play the Finals, you'll find why Embark came up with the term dynamism. This is a game with infinite possibilities in terms of manipulating buildings, movement options of all kinds, and gunplay in the simplest and most unorthodox styles you can think of. For one, the game runs on a physics backend that seems like it has to run on a NASA supercomputer, but it doesn't. This game runs its physics on Embark's servers rather than on your computer, rather than being client-side, meaning that your computational load on your machine for processing this building collapsing from 100 feet into the air into another building, ripping a giant hole in the roof and causing multiple floors to collapse downwards on top of each other in a layered fashion, eventually coming to an abrupt stop due to the nature of the walls leaning against one another, becomes possible to do in a multiplayer space on just about any rig. People can say whatever they want, but there isn't a single multiplayer FPS game doing destruction like the Finals, and that is a fact. I challenge you to find me an example because you can't. Embark connotates it in three separate ways: environmental dynamism, playstyle dynamism, and game mode dynamism. Environmental dynamism describes the metric crap ton of stuff you can blow up in this game, which is basically just about everything, down to the way the game is engineered from a software perspective, like we already said. Playstyle dynamism basically describes the fully modular class types we have on display here: light, medium, and heavy. And game mode dynamism describes the time-delayed nature of how objectives are handled in this game. Basically, the idea is, the more time there is to finish an objective, the more time there is for a crazy play. We saw this nail-biting action at the Finals Esports Major not too recently. Every objective takes time to complete, creating an ebb and flow of attacking and defending for every contestant on the field, creating opportunities for emergent gameplay that otherwise wouldn't happen as often in a game like a Battle Royale. What I think most people will obviously find just about unbelievable concerning the Finals is the game's physics. This game owes everything to Sir Isaac Newton. Yeah, it's cool that you can destroy everything, but the way that it's destroyed is really nothing like any other game. Even small things, like player statues meant to be used as revive beacons for teammates, are physics-based objects. They can be picked up, thrown, tossed around, and even punched away. That means you can throw game mode objective items. You can yank the cash box you need to defend with a winch claw into a more advantageous defensive position. There are items that manipulate gravity. Does your game have an anti-gravity cube? No, I didn't think so. Does your game have a gravity vortex? No, I didn't think so. Does your game have a jump pad? All right, you got me there. This game has a cornucopia of mechanics, and I'm sure one of the reasons they can get away with this is the art style. You don't have to worry about art style conflict when your game is inside a Valve index, so you can make space for a mechanic like temporarily deleting a wall from existence. The map is littered with tossable fire, gas, and explosive barrels. The structures, materials, and small objects in this game are all, remember our buddy Newton, physics-based. So you can put C4 on a potted plant, throw that potted plant at somebody, and then blow up the C4. You can blow up stuff with so many things. You can blow up stuff with an RPG, with C4, with this game's equivalent of the Rainbow Six Siege Ash Charge. Hey, not every single mechanic in the freaking world has to be totally original, it's fine. Something else that the game does a good job of is managing all of these systems in a way that feels relatively balanced. Melee weapons are a viable option, and I will say extremely annoying given the right circumstances, but you have to be in the right place at the right time to get something out of them. They require good positioning on part of the melee user. Did I mention you can do this with dual blades on the medium class? Now, if you think the melee weapons are just weird one-offs, think again. There's all kinds of melee weapons with interesting quirks. There's a spear, there's a sledgehammer, there's a little fencing sword, there's throwing knives, there's all kinds of shotguns and pistols. Gunplay in the finals manages to take a relatively long time to kill and make it feel a lot faster than it really is. You can tell that the devs really try to keep the sandbox varied and interesting. You have your standard assault rifles, shotguns, and sniper rifles, but you have eclectic options, lever actions that you can speed load. There's a twin-barreled 50 caliber assault rifle. All the reloading animations are super snappy and satisfying, and the weapon options for each class feel tailor-made. The light's pump-action shotgun isn't quite like the medium pump-action shotgun, or the heavy pump-action shotgun. Obviously, there are balancing considerations. Fire rate, reload speed, all that, but they feel deserved and sensible. Weapons in the finals feel just as varied and interesting as the rest of the game's mechanics. They're not just kind of there so that Embark can play around with the physics engine. This game is not a glorified tech demo. It's a richly developed game with an interesting ebb and flow to its gameplay loop. Now, I think the gunplay on its own is already really good. There are simple weapons, like an AK. Its stats are pretty much middle of the pack everything. But every once in a while, you come across the Cerberus shotgun. This is a 3-shell break-action shotgun with incendiary rounds. And that means you can set up a fiery trap with this blobular substance known as goo by setting it on fire with your Cerberus shotgun. It lasts about 12 seconds, for those who want to know. We'll get to the blobular substance in just a moment. Another thing I think the game does a good job of handling is the differentiation between its light, medium, and heavy classes. The most obvious thing to note is the difference between HP and movement. Lights are small, fast, and squishy. Heavies are big, slow, and tanky. Duh. And mediums are somewhere in the middle. Okay, really original. However, each of the classes gets an ability that rounds out their downside in a way that still plays into the power fantasy of the character. These are called specializations, and they create a core gameplay loop for an individual character. A specialization is a non-mix and matchable, powerful, unique ability that takes up one specialization slot. For example, Lights can use a cloak, a powerful evasive dash, or a grappling hook, but sometimes the mechanics can be repurposed in different ways. That same Light can throw a vanishing grenade at their feet to provide them with said cloak mechanic. It's just that the interaction is a little bit different. Now, this is not a complete invisibility, and it requires sharp eyes to make it out, but it is enough to throw people off. Heavies are big and slow, but they can use a charge ability that lets them ram through walls and deal a metric buttload of damage on top of it. They also get some very powerful utility options to make up for their lack of mobility. One mechanic the finals embraces is that of goo. Yes, that is the official term for it. Goo is a blob-like substance, and that is a scientific term that I just made up, blob-like. That's hard enough to stop bullets, but it's easily destroyed by explosives. It is a crowd control tool because you can throw a goo grenade at a doorway and jam it. It's also deployable cover on demand, and given the right circumstances, a makeshift elevator. The heavy gets access to this, the goo gun. That means that the heavy can make deployable cover, an elevator, really whatever you want in a strategically advantageous way, provided you have time to set things up. Mediums can be fully dedicated support classes with a healing beam, or they can be a little bit more disruptive with the DMAT tool that I showed you earlier. The strengths of each class are heavily emphasized. For instance, lights are obviously very fast, and mobile, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out, but when I explain that to you, you might have an idea in your head of what that looks like. And then you go and play the game, and then you're like, what the Because lights are so easy to take down with just a couple shots, they pretty much have to lean into evasiveness and trickery to get away safely. So Embark gives them a lot of mobility, like a lot. And I think that's okay. Mediums are my favorite class and the most well-rounded. If you don't know where to start, I would start here. Mediums also have very useful mobility items that can help you and your team. This class can be whatever you want it to be. It can be as specialized or as jack of all trades as you want. The one thing you'll find to be more prevalent than anything in this game is that height advantage is a big deal. When you require zipline desire for higher heights, you can bet your bottom dollar that these seemingly innocent movement options can make the difference in taking an engagement. The three-man team structure of the game requires you to think critically about how all of your utility options synergize together, and versatility is the name of the game. One-trick ponies will almost always get singled out, and that is 100% evidence of a healthy functioning game sandbox, in my opinion. I have watched some clips here and there of the recent esports event for the finals, and I was pleased to find that there seems to be a viability for just about every single tool in this game. There are meta weapons. It's not the end of the world to use an AK over the FAMAS if you don't want to, but all the pros are using the FAMAS, not the AK. There's like one or two people using the AK. Every class has distinct categories they excel at with weaknesses that can be made up for with the help of a teammate. This game manages to create fun, rewarding, dynamic gameplay loops while still remaining competitive and team-based first and foremost. That jolly cooperation is certainly something that I don't think the in-game corporations of this game world particularly care about. And for those who care, the game actually has lore, and I will talk about it. I admit I ignored it completely upon getting into the game, but once I started peeling behind the curtain, I discovered that Embark might actually be cooking something here, and nobody ever really realized it. Now, this game is very dystopian. That guy with the big beard whose name starts with M would be nauseous looking at this game world. Slain enemies vanish into a pile of golden coins, and the game modes are denoted in points of cash. Virtual reality is an integral part of the human experience in this game world a la Ready Player One. More people are on that dang phone than they are touching grass, to the point where the world outside of the phone dimension is called the meat space. IRL is called the meat space. In the meat space, you are meat. But in the finals, you can be anything. There are famous contestants who are known simply by their in-game alias, if you will, but there are also contestants known for their prowess in the meat space and in the game world. This competition is sponsored by a number of frighteningly powerful corporations, represented by CEOs with about as much charisma as tiger sharks. To that end, Embark actually did some pretty cool marketing and made an individual website for one of the more recognizable companies in the game, that of the Osbooze energy drink, which is a bit of a running gag with the community, as far as I can tell. I'm not really sure what's going on here, but it reminds me of another jarred liquid from Team Fortress 2. The writing isn't exactly subtle. Like, while we work on our ability to mass produce, you should get ready to mass consume. Gee, I wonder what their opinion is on the global economic situation. But yeah, all of these companies are pretty evil. It's not exactly trying to hide it. The telecom company Ngimo is famous for its so-called Reality Shield, which is basically a comment filtering service to keep you from having to read negative feedback online. Now, I could use one of those. Each of these companies have pretty involved media for them produced by Embark, which tells me they take their presence in this game world they've created pretty seriously. They represent a bigger picture of the pie that they're selling. What's also interesting is the degree to which Embark tries to include some narrative elements through the use of occasional cinematics that can launch when you boot up the game. And it's not a lot, but it's better than nothing. I do appreciate that multiplayer devs are trying to do something with what they have. There is a hacker group called CNS that hacks the finals every other season or so, and has led the community on a trail of breadcrumbs to piece together what's really going on in this ever so violent Truman Show. If you ever want to go down this rabbit hole, trust me, there actually is the finals lore. It's kinda neato. There's actually a detailed backstory of OSHA violations behind each and every corporation featured in the game. How Embark may choose to expand on this one day, I'm not too sure. Maybe somewhat ironic, however, is that a lot of people don't like this game for a very specific reason that doesn't have anything to do with medically dangerous withdrawal symptoms from an energy drink. Rather, Embark themselves are engaged in a practice some may find unsavory. Which brings me to the game's announcers that you'll hear commentate over your in-game escapades, Scotty and June. Scotty and June seem like standard run-of-the-mill dystopian game show hosts. They have a certain kind of delivery in their commentary that feels bright and upbeat, but every once in a while, they'll say something kinda weird.
Now, the Kingfish, the Jet Setters, and finally, the Powerhouses. And they are off!
And they are off.
Cash, the team that tucks away enough money first triumphs.
Not in the sense that the word is pronounced incorrectly, and that's because Scotty and June aren't human? Maybe? It's kind of implied but not confirmed, but in real life, at Embark Studios, these characters are AI, not fully generative AI. Important distinction. Embark has been very vocal about their usage of AI for the voice lines in this game, but it's not generative LLM AI in the sense that you or I might think. What happened here was some voice actors went to Embark, said some lines, had their voice samples taken, and now that sample, their voice print, is kind of thrown into a robot blender, and that machine at Embark makes their robot model talk like that voice print. And sometimes it sounds really bad. But said voice actors consented to this agreement. It's not fully generating AI just out there in the ether, plagiarizing other people's work. But it doesn't exactly sit well with most people, and I don't particularly blame them for that, because it does feel kinda and a lot of the time it sounds kind of The whole idea of not hiring voice actors to do the voice acting just feels a little anti-art. And maybe that's what Embark is going for. In a weird way, maybe this is one of these cases where if it sounds a bit weird, it's kind of in line with the glitchy, computery world of the finals. Sounds kind of like a cop-out. I guess there's something to be said there. But if you can get past the AI thing, if you're willing to give the art direction a chance, you will get to play an FPS game unlike anything else on the market right now. This is a game that drips with inspired gameplay design. Every tool in your toolbox is there for a reason, and every rooftop you traverse, staircase you climb, or floor you demolish was put there for you specifically to do just that. It is a game with very intentional, specific design choices, and it's a labor of complex love. Every match of the finals plays out in a unique, interesting way every single time, and I am addicted to trying out all the different gizmos and gadgets that this game has to offer. It has infinite ability to make plays outside of your gunplay. It has movement, utility, and gunplay in equal parts. It is a very, very creative shooter game. Whereas a game like Counter-Strike is defined by its limitations, the finals is defined by its possibilities. It doesn't necessarily make it a more competitive game than Counter-Strike, but it sure is a hell of a lot of fun. If you were on the fence about it, I highly encourage you to give it a shot. Subscribe for more couch co-op video game essays. Deuces.